your book kind of makes the case to me that actually a lot of the reason we feel dissatisfied with work is not so much because we're missing some overarching passion, but there could be like lots of little tweaks we can make that would actually make our experience much better. So that may be the completely wrong interpretation, but based on that, do you think we need passion?
Yeah, my take was broadly this, that, that I found that a lot of the best organizations I'd ever worked in had been, I've worked in sort of, a dozen restaurants and then 5 or 6 workplaces, but I've been in various teams along the way of those places. And almost without exception, the best places I worked in were good, irrespective of the boss. And it wasn't necessarily a reflection. Culture wasn't necessarily a reflection directly of the CEO, and so it made me feel. Yeah, I guess it reminded me of what Professor Sir Carey Cooper calls the line manager lottery. That our experience of work is more than anything, is determined by our line manager, by our direct boss, more than anything else. So as a consequence, I was sort of very aware that, I guess if anyone has studied economics, they would say sort of these macroeconomics and microeconomics. And, I guess macroeconomics is sort of for culture. Macro culture would be to say that, the boss creates the rules, the top-down values, things like that. But then this sort of microeconomics, which is that actually individual actions within teams can actually have a really big impact. And, my feeling was resolutely that any individual could probably impact the culture that they worked in by having a discussion with the 5, 10, 20 people who they directly work with. And so, 12 of the interventions in my book are just about beating personal burnout, trying to push back against personal feelings of being frazzled and exhausted by work. So I guess, a lot of it was, it's almost, I saw it as like a cookbook for workplace culture. So it's with a cookbook, you don't necessarily read it cover to cover, but you see something that you want to create. You see something that you want to imagine up, and you set about trying to do it. And so, the book was an attempt to try and give you that. It's like to say, okay, I haven't got time to do a whole book, 320-page book, but give me something that's going to make work better next week. And so it's an intention to try to allow people to, it's a spell book. It's sort of a wizard's directory of spells, a witch's directory of spells, to try and improve your personal situation at work, really.
And what I think was great about that was that I imagine ironically, I've never actually worked in a big corporate, but I imagine that people often assume there's not much that they as an individual can do, certainly in terms of changing a team or a culture around them. So, but it's very encouraging that that's actually possible.
Yeah, I think, firsthand, one of the things that was most energizing and made me sort of feel that the approach was right was that I met one company of 70, 100 people, and the receptionist had changed the culture. And I thought, well, okay, if the receptionist, who for most people would be, if they perceived a hierarchy, would be very much at the bottom of the hierarchy. If the receptionist can change a culture, then it illustrates that actually we're just waiting for permission to do things. And there's probably far more scope for us to have an impact on our organizations than we might otherwise think. So, intriguing for me, because it forced a reappraisal of who can do stuff and what they can do, really.
So in your honest opinion then, because the dogma of the day is, everyone needs their why, everyone needs their mission, their purpose. To be fulfilled at work, do you think we actually need those things?
I think purpose can be a bit of an illusion. So, most certainly what you discover is that if people feel a personal sense of purpose, then it can be helpful. But what happens is that these terms are sort of ineffectively and inaccurately packaged up by companies, and then they set about trying to recreate something not necessarily following the line of evidence. So let me be specific. It's some wonderful research on purpose. So, Adam Grant is probably the world's leading workplace expert. And he did some interesting research into purpose. So what he did is he went into US college, and he looked to, even if colleges have fundraisers, some colleges have scholarships, and they actually raise the money to pay for those scholarships. So it's not always altruism. They have people phoning former graduates trying to raise money and what have you. And so he met those fundraisers who were trying to pay for disadvantaged students to go to college. And he did he separated the group into two. The first of whom had their manager come and tell them about one of the recipients of this free scholarship, and which is pretty classic of the way we'd do purpose, right? Would say, oh my God, this is the mission of this firm. Here's what we're doing. And the second group actually met the recipient of the free scholarship. So a case study of one versus the other. The team that met the recipient raised 3 times the funds of the team that heard the manager describe it. And this for me is like a perfect encapsulation of why we often talk about purpose, but purpose can be found, but it cannot be given. And I think it's sort of a really important distinction that, someone in your workplace can say, our mission is to do this. And I feel a sort of visceral connection with it, but you can't say to them, our mission is to do this, and expect it to have anywhere near the wholehearted, the full-blooded support. So I think, absolutely purpose can work, but I think as for most firms, it can end up leading to sort of a waste of energy, really, because you're trying to force people to believe in a certain way.
Mm. And do you think you personally, that now that you're, doing what you're doing, you've found purpose? Is that something, before and after, perhaps?
Not necessarily.
Difficult questions.
No. I'm sort of, I adore this stuff. If there was something that was going to be purpose driven for me, it would be something slightly more ecological, but I adore this stuff. And I do think, I'm fascinated with it. It's just, I haven't yet found the way to like hit that Zeynep Ton thing where it's like improving 10 million lives. I haven't yet found the way to feel like, wow, I'm changing people's lives here.
Well, you're certainly on the way. I can tell you that for free. Absolutely. Absolutely.